Yep, go.
Alright, thank you very much. I'll take verbal POIs, thank you. Starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pure Malay, but people think that I'm pure Chinese. I cannot find a place to belong in modern Malaysian society. I am too much of a banana to Changhai with my Chinese friends. That is, if I do have any. Thank you.
PM? PM? Is it just me or did PM drop out for other people? No?
Yeah.
Okay, it is a collective problem.
Well,
Can
just don't.
this
Oh
wait,
no.
PM, PM. Is it okay if you just turn off your camera? Because I feel like
Oh,
there is connection problems, but um can you try reading the motion again just to make sure if this is clear?
this house believes that diversity policies should target acquired diversity as compared to inherent diversity. Is that
Yes.
alright?
Yeah,
Alright.
that's much clearer. You can restart your speech given that it was only 39 seconds in. So, yeah. Thank you.
Alright.
Whenever you're ready.
Alright. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pure Malay, but people think that I'm pure Chinese. I can't find a place to belong in modern Malaysian society. I'm too much of a banana to Shanghai with my Chinese friends, that is if I do have any, thanks Yujie. But the Malay people just don't quite think I'm quite Malay enough. I'm the product of a random Malaysian dude who decided to marry a Chinese woman in the 1980s. But ladies and gentlemen, when the British imperialists, God bless their souls, left the beloved country of Malaya, there was a bit of divide that happened between the Malay, Chinese, and Indian races because of the divide and conquer strategy that the British had imposed on us. What happened was, historically, there was a form of inequality that occurred within the ways in which individuals had lived. But that was because of the conditions that they were in, ladies and gentlemen. That was because the way in which that they were grown up in, the way in which they were raised. Some were raised within cities, some were raised within rural areas, some were raised within estates. So that was because of the inequality that occurred, ladies and gentlemen. What happened was, in Malaysia, we decided to introduce an affirmative action policy specifically that was targeted towards the Bumi Putra race within the country, that decided to discriminate against those who are within the Indians and the Chinese, ladies and gentlemen. We introduced political forms of affirmative action. The Prime Minister couldn't be anyone else but a Malay. The certain policies were targeted specifically for Bumi Putras. In educational policies, we introduced vernacular schools specifically targeted to help the Bumi Putra race, ladies and gentlemen. Within social policies, ladies and gentlemen, we allow them to have access towards certain in economics. They had access to certain capital markets that other races couldn't, ladies and gentlemen. So what happened was, the inequality was based off race, and what happened was it led to a 1969 racial riot that occurred between the Chinese and Malay races because of this form of inequality. We want to change that. We want to do away with this, because we believe that we want to make sure that states are achieve the obligation in ensuring that they are fair, in making sure that their policies are able to cater towards those who really needed it the most. Few pieces of characterization that we need to make in this debate. The first is on how acquired diversity is equal to people who are likely to be more in need. Four things here. Firstly, we believe that we are operating on the idea of a birth lottery, and though opposition might say, yeah, sure, the birth lottery, you can't choose whether or not you were born a certain race or not, but also the birth lottery states that you do not choose the conditions by which you were born in, and the conditions that you were born in dictate the way in which you live your life, ladies and gentlemen. So whether or not you were born within a poorer background, whether or not you were born within rural areas, are all ways in which you live, dictate the way in which you live your life, and dictate the way your futures go for you, ladies and gentlemen. So the birth lottery here still stands. Secondly, inherent diversity and acquired diversity can still be intersectional. I literally just had a math lecture about this yesterday. We are not saying that every minority will be ignored just to cater to those who really need it. We can't assert that there will not be any minorities who fall under this acquired diversity by the fact that they were born within a certain race, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that instead of focusing mainly towards the fact that they are a certain individual, we focus on the fact that they really needed the help. Like for instance, if that person really is someone who has a disability and it caused them to not be able to achieve a certain educational level, or they're unable to achieve a certain income level, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that they still fall under the idea of acquired diversity still. But that's the way in which we work, ladies and gentlemen. And those forms of diversity can be intersectional. The third thing here is we abolish race-based policies. We abolish vernacular schools. We abolish the ability for individuals who get certain benefits just because of the fact that they were born a certain race, or born a certain color, or born as a certain for instance, a man or a woman, ladies and gentlemen. And lastly here is that merit-based quotas still exist. These are merely about needs-based quotas that need to be fair, that need to cater towards those who really need it, ladies and gentlemen. So if someone who is for instance, a minority but is rich and doesn't require needs-based scholarships, they can still opt for merit-based scholarships that exist under our policy as well. We only want to make sure that needs-based quotas, or these forms of diversity policies exist to those who essentially need it the most. Two arguments that we're going to prove to you within this debate today in my speech. The first is why individuals exploit the inherent discrimination that they face to their advantage, and secondly, why is it that it is state obligation to be fair within the status quo. Firstly, why individuals exploit the inherent discrimination that they face towards their advantage, ladies and gentlemen? Because we believe that oftentimes, even in the status quo, we already have individuals who exploit this form of diversity quotas, ladies and gentlemen. Certain needs-based quotas oftentimes require things like, for instance, a fixed noting, for instance, a fixed income, ladies and gentlemen. But often individuals who, for instance, own businesses, they are able to manipulate the way in which they are determined to be individuals who need this needs-based who need this needs-based policy, ladies and gentlemen. But or they just say that just because they are form of a certain minority, they often exploit these forms of exploit the conditions in which they live in, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe that then these individuals who claim to just be a part of a minority but still hide the fact that they are individuals who are richer, or hide the fact that they are living within certain conditions, oftentimes abuse the fact that they are a part of the greater of the higher socioeconomic status of individuals, and are able to benefit from this. The impact here is very simple. Since there are a very limited amount of people who do get these forms of scholarship, or there are who get these forms of diversity quotas, ladies and gentlemen, you take away from the ability for individuals to access this. So and since it's the best way to advance the socioeconomic ladder, this is something that's really, really harmful, ladies and gentlemen. So individuals who exploit this inherent discrimination for this diversity policies are literal monsters, ladies and gentlemen, and we do not want to agree with that. Then. Second argument here is why is it that it is the state's obligation to be fair then? Firstly, policies often create a racial supremacy issue when it comes to the legislation of certain policies. When they legislate certain policies for certain races, it means that they endorse that certain race in comparison to others. For instance, they endorse the African American race in comparison to individuals who are for instance, Hispanic, ladies and gentlemen. So all of these will create an endorsement issue that we don't believe is fair, ladies and gentlemen. So it is state obligation to be able to recognize that they are fair and not be discriminatory within themselves. In order to prevent the loss of the hearts and minds of citizens, we believe that states must achieve this obligation. It is morally abhorrent to allow individuals to exploit this form of diversity that they are in, and we believe that we should propose. Thank you.
Thank you, PM. To start the case coming from OO, calling on LO. Here. Hold on. LO, I can see you, but I can't hear you. Can you try speaking again? Nope. Your voice is very soft. Maybe increase the audio input.
Hello.
There you go. Can you try reading the motion?
This House believes that diversity policies, example, needs-based
Okay.
scholarships,
That's fine.
I don't think the volume is really that clear for me.
Sorry, what?
The volume is really low on my computer.
Or is that still a problem?
Maybe you try to shout.
It's still soft, but it's audible for my end. But there are still people who think um, it's still soft. Is there any way that you can fiddle with the Zoom settings to increase audio input volume? Or audio output volume, rather. Microphone volume on Zoom. Oh, I think it became worse. Or perhaps turn off your noise suppression. That could also be it. Oh, wait. Hello? Now we really can't hear you. Oh no. We still can't hear you, Hello. We see you speaking. We don't hear the speaking. Let's just give Hello some time to fix their technical issues. At the worst case, just for time's sake, I'll still time this as 3 minutes for disconnection policy. If by the time that 3 minutes is up and Elo still hasn't fixed their tech issue.
Hello.
Okay, there, we can hear you. Can I confirm with the other debaters if they can hear Elo?
Can he repeat?
Hello.
Yeah, I can just hear it.
Okay, I think that is sufficient. So yeah, Elo, whenever you're ready.
Okay, wait, let me just set up my stopwatch for it. Yeah. Okay. Can I reaffirm that I'm audible?
Yes, you are audible.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Chair, the main reason, the main problem in status quo is that many minorities that cannot change where they're born in, what their race is, or what their gender is, are getting discriminated and not getting the chance to go into universities if this type of policies were not present in the first place. We tell you that number one, we will tell you why inherent diversity is way more important than prioritizing income level. Because we tell you first that you are born with it and you cannot change whatever this is. Because you cannot choose where you are born, you cannot choose which family you have, which friends you get, which place you're born in, or which race or which gender. But you can always improve your income level by earning more. You can always learn to speak better English, etc., etc. It's obviously here that it's principally abhorrent that you are punished for something you cannot control. It's true that minorities are punished in status quo because you see so many examples in status quo. I tell you that as an Asian, I find it very hard to get into Harvard if these types of minorities are not targeted and do not have a specific quota. I tell you first that this discrimination is very present in the status quo because these things directly affect these people's lives. Women are discriminated, black people are more likely to live in poor areas. These are all examples of reasons why minorities are getting discriminated for something they cannot change. It is very likely on your side that even if they're poor, they would much rather choose a poor white person than a poor black person. Feminists, we give you so many examples on why discrimination is such a big problem in status quo because we tell you that here the opportunities are very different for Gov and for up. On your side, the system is inherently racist and shuts out minorities for those people who apparently need more needs. We tell you here that these minorities are discriminated. These minorities are getting teased for something that they cannot change. If I'm an Asian, I get comments every single day saying, hey, your eyes are small. Because obviously you're discriminated if you are a minority. On your side, you inherently reinforce this discrimination and you just say, hey, these people do not really need it. We tell you here that you should prioritize it because they need to have the chance. Because on your side, they are racist, they do not get the chance to get these scholarships in the first place, and on your side, as insofar you cannot prove why a poor white person should deserve it more than a poor black person, you lose this debate immediately. Number two, we tell you that this on our side gives a voice and representation to these minorities which otherwise will be discriminated against. Even if they're rich, it's apologies, even if they are a rich black person that essentially does not need any needs, it still gives representation and inspiration and assurance to black people that they can make it in life too. When black people see that Obama became the first American president, the first black American president, they were inspired. They were told by the world, hey, you can make it in life. Hey, you are given the same opportunities as these people. Because even though you are black, right? Because we tell you here that this is way more valuable than whatever you're trying to push. On your side, the black people are more incentivized to go into gangs or something, to do things and not prioritize their education because of the fact that they know that they're not gonna get in because of the fact that they're black. We tell you here that on our side, we get more people to join education in the first place, to prioritize their education because they are told that they get a chance. They get a specific quota inside these universities that is reserved specifically for them. If those policies were not there, they would never get any incentive to join because they know the world is against them as a minority. We tell you this is very valuable because on your side the world is inherently racist and they block out these people from getting an education. Therefore, they will get the image that, hey, the world is against me. The whole world does not want me to get an education. The whole world does not want me because apparently I'm Asian or I'm black or I'm a woman and they do not want me. On our side, we are clearly different. We tell you that it's the same way as Obama speaks for the black people. The same way that Obama serves as an image for the black people. We tell you here that if you see a person and you clearly see that in status quo there are many black people or many Asian people who are allowed to join universities because the universities reserve a quota for them, you get the incentive to actually join in the higher education. You actually get an incentive to do this in the first place because we say that every single person deserves rights no matter where they're born, no matter what their race is. Every single person deserves the right no matter what minority they are in. Number three, we tell you that this will also break stereotypes inside the university or inside the education sector or environment because there's actually more different types of minorities and breaking stereotypes obviously will lead to a better personal image because this does two things, right? Number one, it provides a better environment for the inside the universities in the first place. It's for students inside your universities in the first place. Number two, it breaks stereotypes because you actually have a black friend in university that's actually quite nice. So you abolish any stereotypes that you used to have against black people because you never knew them in the first place before the black friend was actually introduced to you. We tell you here that a more diverse environment provides better environment overall because it breaks stereotypes and it gives minorities an actual chance. Okay, let me just give you a rundown of our whole case on OO here. Because we tell you first that every single person deserves rights. And no matter what, if they're Asian, if they're black, if they're Caucasian, every single person deserves rights. You can't tell me that you're going to be inherently racist towards them and you're not going to provide policies that does not allow this type of behavior. Because on our side, we actually create a policy that completely abolishes racism against those who would have a chance otherwise. We tell you that in status quo, the reason that many universities like Harvard or Oxford actually have quotas for random minorities that are being discriminated is the main reason that we are fighting for today. Our stance is simple. We don't want people to be discriminated against. We don't want people to be told, hey, you're an Asian, I don't want you inside my universities. And even if a rich black person were to get that opportunity, it will still be a good representation for the black people itself. We tell you that every single person deserves the same opportunity. Every single person deserves the same rights to get an education. This is why I am so proud to propose here.
Thank you, LO, and to extend the case coming from OG calling on DPM. Here.
Can I be heard?
Yes, I'm clear.
Okay, that's good. I prefer verbal POIs before I start, and okay. Hold on, let me drink water. Okay. Let me get this straight. I think the idea of a birth lottery and I guess what O pauses about how you don't get to choose to be born a black person, an Asian person, whatever, is also symmetrical on the side of opening government. Because just as how you don't get to choose whether you're born a rich person, a poor person, a person born in an urban neighborhood or in a place in the middle of nowhere, right? I think in terms of weighing, I think it's pretty much symmetrical in terms of how you're actually going to provide opportunities to people on the ground. Because understand that understand that most of this okay, sorry, I think most like of this like traits such as being a poor person is still gonna follow you for the rest of your life. I'm gonna go more into that later. But secondly, I want to point out how this is a retrospective debate, right? So on opening government, we build a new world in telling you how we prioritize people based on their social economic status, their educational background, whatever, in order to give them opportunities that they may not have gotten otherwise. I think then we also want to tell you why this is a world that's much better than the status quo in which they currently use race-based quotas that to basically help reduce like discrimination or systemic discrimination across like academia, etc. Right? We tell you that basically this current status quo has not solved anything, and we tell you why our world is much better. But I think another thing that I want to point out in my framing is the idea of representation of minorities. We also note how minorities' experiences is not a monolith. Everybody have different experiences. And I think the most problematic part of O's case is that they imply that every minority's experience is going to be the same. They basically said that Obama's experience of becoming a president means that you as a black person can become a president. I think this is especially not true given the social economic status of most African Americans today, given how most of them are still living in neighborhoods that are still dangerous and often do not receive enough government aid to help in the first place. I think then this shows a lot of problem in OO's framing in the first place. And I'm going to go straight into terms of responses. Because one of the things they tell you in their first argument is about how the system will prioritize white people over black people. I will tell you why this is untrue in first, because we tell you that minorities are historically one are stuck in a horrendous socioeconomic conditions where they're often in poverty. They don't get any civil rights at all to basically rise up the socioeconomic ladder, or even then they don't even get the right to go to the same school and in turn getting way different educational status. I think even then, even if we buy their premise on how white people are going to get prioritized, we think that even then, we think that the system will over time placate to basically people more minorities, because in terms of proportion of like population, more and more minorities are going to be one that's being economically disadvantaged, which is something that we are trying to help them, and by prioritizing um this acquired diversity, right? I think this is a much better way of helping minorities, because now you're not only looking at them through their race, you're looking at them through their social economic conditions and actually help them, and also not discriminate other people that does not happen to be a minority. I think that also further reinforce discrimination. They also tell you how on their side of the house on how our side basically reinforce discrimination. I don't think they really elaborated how this actually happens outside of the world.
Point.
But even then, we tell you why uh, again, we tell you this won't happen in terms of discrimination against minorities, because things such as them historically being economically oppressed is still going to mean that they're still going to gain some sort of diversity, like some sort of like scholarships to schools, some sort of like affirmative action still going to happen on in minorities nevertheless. But I think sure we might take a we might take a bit of a bite the bullet, and say that maybe some proportion of minorities going to schools, etc., is going to be much lower. But I think it's going to be much better in the long term, in which people are still going to get equal opportunities in the long term, because both white people and black people are still going to get the same opportunities. I'm going to go into more reasons on why this is much better in the long term in my arguments. But I think then another thing that or another problem with that case is basically how they say they can abolish stereotypes. But I think we actually reinforce them, given the idea of a race-based or like those like inherent like the diversity, how they work is that you assign this sports based on like race, gender, etc. Right? So we think that it's actually create even more stereotypes, because this like scholarship, etc., give better chance than an average person would into applying to a school, etc. Right? So I think that actually creates even more stereotypes that this groups of people can only succeed because they're given so much help from the government. I think this is also proof that this works and this is exists in the real world, considering that this like race-based quota system hasn't worked in the world, and like people on the right are gonna keep saying, oh, this race-based thing is like very racist, etc. We should. I think the real world has shown race-based quota system or like this inherent diversity policies has not worked at all. Now I'm going to go into further into my extensions on the side of OG, right? But to tell you that it's actually much fairer on that side of the house, insofar as you mitigate infighting between minorities. Because understand that there's going to be a lot of minorities in a place, right? Understand that there's also a limited amount of scholarships. So for many of these minorities, the only opportunity for them is to rise to the top. The only way for them to rise to the top is through these scholarships, etc. Right? So I think it creates immense pressure and between this like minority groups. So what is gonna happen next is that these groups are gonna pit against each other to fight to the top, and you're gonna create even more tension because I think a lot of this like race based on like inherent diversity quotas based on traits that are inherently distinct, which is like, oh yeah, I'm a Asian person, you're a black person, and I think this types of distinctability is the ones that actually creates way more tension compared to the side of like government world where people see each other more as like people who come from the same socioeconomic background. I come from origin of poverty, and you also come from origin of poverty. I think it's less likely going to increase tension in the sense that you're not going to cause things such as race wars like in Malaysia, where basically Malays are saying, oh, the Chinese people are getting too much and blah blah blah, and you're going to incite even more problems in the first place. I think then secondly, it serves that more people like better serves people in need. Because note that while minorities are historically disenfranchised, understand that other people also face this type of disenfranchisement too. I think then you're then able to actually serve people that actually need this like affirmative action, because like in terms of utility, it's much better to give a scholarship to someone that's poor regardless of their race than to give a scholarship to a black person regardless of what their income level is. So I think in terms of that, it's much more fair and more equitable for society to do so. I think I think in terms of weighing, it's extremely simple, because what OG essentially does is that we prioritize people's living experience, their historical income, their living conditions, their educational level as a whole, right? I think these things are things that fundamentally uh, are the ones that actually prevents people from rising to the top, because minorities are historically economically disadvantaged. I think while giving chance to everybody, we also still prioritize minorities in the sense that we still prioritize them because they're mostly historically disenfranchised. I think that in terms of fairness, we think that UG is much better in terms of granting it to minorities and never been part of the propose.
Thank you, TPM. And to extend the case coming from OO calling on yellow. Here.
Hi, am I audible and visible?
Yes to both.
Okay. Get my timer. I don't get the OG case. The case isn't about championing rights for minorities. The OG case and the Gov case, spoiler alert, is to demonize rich minorities versus poor minorities. So this whole case about helping minorities, ridiculous. We do the same thing on op. We think that is symmetric. They had to prioritize the system, right? Which is what we told you in Leader of Op. We said it's not about rhetoric, it's about the implementation of policies. At the point in which you look at income levels, it's also the point in which the scholarship goes to a poor white person over a poor black person. That's because the system is biased and the system is inherently racist. People always try to justify and sympathize with white shooters, school shooters, by saying, oh, these people had mental issues, we didn't do enough to help them. Yet when the Southport murders happen and it's from a person with a particular skin color, people are so quick to jump to conclusions against immigrants. That is the reason why status quo is biased against minorities, and Gov has to defend poor people, the scholarship going to a poor white person instead. Note, for many people to escape the ghetto or the situation that they are born into, their only avenue is education and jobs. At the point in which you allow the universities to prioritize a certain demographic, they are more likely to select people from around them, poor people around them. This is what Elo says. Why would Harvard ever take a poor Asian person? If we look at income level, there's pretty sure there's someone in America making less than that. So they're gonna give it to the American instead. You lock black people into their areas and reduce their social mobility. I'm gonna do 3 things in this speech. 1, I'll tell you why OG fails their principal burden. Secondly, I'll bring back, in the chat please. Secondly, I'll bring back Elo's arguments and why it had significantly no response. Lastly, I'll talk to you about political capital if I have time. 1, let's talk about OG. They never tell us why they demonize the rich Malay over the poor Malay, right? We would say on OO, discrimination on the basis of skin color or your gender still exists. He says it's symmetrical. No, it's not symmetrical. You can do things to increase your social economic status. You can learn English to get a better accent so people think, you speak more like them. You cannot change your skin color. You can't change your gender. I mean, in most countries you can't, right? There are things you can do that. This is the extent of our principal argumentation. You can study harder, you can get scholarships. Is it hard? Yes, it's really damn hard. But the comparative is you can't change your gender, you can't change the body part you're born with unless you have a lot of money and people are accepting around you. But you definitely can change these other things that you can earn more. Comparatively on a scale, it's easier. So it's not symmetrical. Don't believe OG when they give you this bollocks argumentation. The second thing we'll say is let's bite the bullet and say these people are super rich. We'll say a few things. Number 1, maybe they came up from rags to riches. Maybe they came from the ghetto. That is to say the representation still exists on outside. But secondly, not all of them are complicit in the system, although they benefited from it. Simple example, in politics, you can still be part of the system while criticizing it. You can be a female who hates how oppressive makeup is, but still use makeup. That is to say, there's no principle of justification as to why a rich Malay or a rich black person deserves less protection than a poor person. We agree, the state should be fair in selecting. Unfortunately, it isn't. Black people are 10 times more subject to police brutality, and white people will get a majority of the opportunities. I think Gov needs to defend that. Does having money change discrimination? Not really. Insofar as we tell you that it's about skin color or gender or things that you can't change, people make memes about, picking cotton or slavery on the basis of your skin color. We're not clear why having more money means people don't look at your skin color. We'd argue they face probably as much the same issues if you're a black person. Number 2, let's talk about Nathan's argument and why it didn't receive enough attention. We said that it's important to have a role model of someone at the top. He gave you the example of Obama. Yes, they live in dangerous neighborhoods, as DPM says. It's about whether they have inspiration, whether it's easier for them to join a gang and take up arms, or whether they should do the hard thing and study when everyone around them is telling them not to, right? We think insofar as you're more likely to choose a poor white person over a poor black person, people are less motivated when they have less role models. And that's the trade-off on the graph. You need to defend having less black people in the system, even if they are rich. Let's talk about political capital. I'll take closing if you have anything. OG?
Yeah, okay. So if you want to push basically, I can basically be an inspiration to other minorities, then why not just get someone that also comes from a different socioeconomic background but still the same minority?
Oh yeah, but that's idealistic. I just told you why it's more likely to point to a poor white person over a poor black person because they're likely to make excuses. They say black people are lazy, right? So you need to do with that on graph, but you didn't. So I don't think you guys fulfill the burden. Let's talk about political capital and how politicians lobby. Quite intuitively, they capitalize on the most amount of votes and people. This means it's more likely to be white voters. I mean, by definition, black people are the minority and are not represented in society. This also punishes, right? Because black people especially, self-silence. They feel disenfranchised and defeated by a historically racist institution, a democratic government which does not cater to them. This means they self-silence. That's why it's important to put more people at the top rather than less people. Why does change happen top down? We told you Obama is president, but let's not even go with that extreme, right? We said change has to happen from top down because these people make laws. We need people to be able to relate to them. That's why people go crazy when Ariel was cast as a black mermaid, because whether she is rich or not, she is black and she's able to put the black experience out there. We think these people can bring in voter bases when they have cults of personality, right? Like Kamala Harris is literally a daughter of immigrants. Insofar as Gov would disqualify her for being rich, I don't think they get any of their benefits. Let's make this debate clear. We have to champion someone. Why would we choose the rich person? We think we choose the best of us to go out. Under Gov, I think even if you are blind and you really idealistically you don't want to deal with historic racism and you choose people who are just poor and black, you're more likely to fail because if you do some things like cost of living issues, coming from a broken family, having low income, so having to work part-time jobs to support your family, you have to take care of your siblings. These are issues which traditionally rich black people don't face. That's why rich blacks are able to make it to the top, and the change reverberates down to the bottom. To fight bigots, we must have a good story. They reinforce stereotypes because people are able to point to the poor black and say this guy is not doing well, and they get to perpetrate the stereotypes. On the outside, we create an image which overpowers the bigotry and the fear. Insofar as these poor, rich black people are so good, so powerful, and they are super powerful and they succeed, we think people love a rags to riches story. Morgan Freeman, Will Smith, Samuel L. Jackson, people love these kind of stories. We think we inspire more young black people together to not take up arms, but to do the hard thing and push through the discrimination. Very proud to oppose when black people are plagued by suffering from similar issues regardless of income level. Very proud to champion all of them regardless of income.
Thank you, DLO. And to start the case, coming from CG, calling on MG. Here.
Hi, am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Give me a second to set my timer. Uh, Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'll just go over a little bit of a mechanization of how the subsidies or quotas will look like, and I'll go into what OGO said and go into my extensions, right? So how would this policy look like? So for Gulf, we use delegated resources. We'll just delegate resources to people that really need it, rather just based on the race that or like just the race of the skin, the color of the skin. On upside, they've been defending we'll give subsidies or we'll help people just because they are minorities, right? I think the whole reason there's a need for these diversity policies in the first place is because people thought there was an inequality to what causes the availability of an education or service. But we tell you that the most vulnerable group of people in this case are the ones that need the help, not the ones that don't have the skin color for it, right? Born into a black family, as long as you apply for a diversity slot, you'll get it regardless of whether you need it or not. This is the world that OP has been pushing for. On our side, a diversity policy does not differentiate if you were black or blue or pink. If you're born with a disadvantage, or you are if you're born into a family with a disadvantage, or you are a vulnerable group, you'll get the help that you need. The difference here is simple. Panel, we help the people that need it. Whereas on OP helps the people that they think needs it. Here's the problem with it for two reasons, right? First of all, the system automatically, sorry, ops system automatically assumes all people of that minority is incapable and needs the help. Second, the systemic racism that OP is trying to prove so hard is precisely also a contention in their case. I'm just going to responses simply first, right? Not now. I'll take you at 5. Representation. OO has been arguing this from the start, down the bench, right? I think there's enough minorities that are smart or capable enough to be able to get into more prestigious or harder to enter institutions. I just don't see why representation outweighs the importance of helping actual people that are poor, actual people that are marginalized, like they don't wait, hold on. Yeah, so like they cannot get into universities based on like their language. They can't speak the language, or they're just too far away. They need the money to travel to that country to enter that university. These are the people that actually need it, right? On on ops side, you would get a minority person, regardless of their economic status, whether they are capable, whether they are rich enough, whether they actually have the ability to enter that university or go for that spot or in the workplace. You disregard any of their abilities and just spoon feed it to them. On our side, we get people that need it, right? We get the most vulnerable person to the place that they need to excel. Let diversity be the side benefit from excellence, not the main focus. Two reasons why I told you this systemic racism that OP is trying so hard to prove is actually a contention. First of all, the moment OO tells you that we have to help minorities is when they already highlight to you how their system is impeccably racist. The complete disregard for whether the minority actually wants it or not is a prime example of the systemic racism that they are trying to eradicate. I think this responds neatly to OO's point of how the system favors the majority even within the vulnerable people. Because even if you don't buy my point, here's one last reply to that, right? We believe that a poor white person still isn't better off than a rich black person. Yeah, POI. Opening, closing. Okay. So our extension of the day is simple. We tell you that in the case that OO do get their representation, it does not help their own case. And I'm going to flip this and tell you how racism is even worse for the black person or for the representation that they're trying to argue, right? Every single time a minority succeeds on their side of the world due to the diversity policy, the point of which OO is trying to eradicate, or on the point of which OO is trying to eradicate is racism, it doesn't work because the minorities' efforts will precisely be because of the diversity policy, the minorities' efforts will not be validated. What do I mean? Whenever a black person enters a university, the first thing people look at is not, this person is as good as me, or this person is as capable as me. The point of which the diversity policy actually does work, every single time a minority enters a university or enters your workplace, this person will be viewed as, this person is here due to the diversity policy. Now, the difference here is simple, right? On our side, if the poor person gets in because they are poor and people say, this person is here because they are poor, this does not matter because on our side, there's no delta. If they are poor and they don't get a job, they don't get a job. But even if people look at them and say, you're poor and you don't get a job, they actually do get a job and they get a chance to work, they get a chance to advance through the economic ladder. And we tell you that not all black people or not all minorities, as they're trying to say, are victims. As long as OO keeps painting these minorities in a victimized light, to the point of which they do not have the chance or they do not even think they have the chance to be equals as the majority, they will never be able to improve. Yeah, sure. Okay, on our side, it doesn't matter. At least we have poor white people. We have other forms of like marginalized reasons, right? On your side, you're just saying that, oh, because you are of this minority group, and therefore you should get the subsidy regardless of whether you are rich or poor, whether you really need it or not. We're arguing on the sense of vulnerability. If you're poor, and it doesn't matter what your skin color, by the way, if you're poor, you do not get this job, you do not get certain job opportunities, you don't get into certain universities, you do not have a chance to better your life. We're telling you that the specific need for these type of chances are why we win this debate. On your side, you do not care if some people need it, right? As long as you are black, you're gonna get this. As long as you are Asian, you're gonna get this. As long as your eyes are small, you're gonna get this. Yeah, we don't think that that is fair on any reason. And I think the weighing here is simple, right? Vulnerability over representation. We tell you how people that need it are the ones that are the most vulnerable. They do not have an active choice. If they do not get the job, even if people laugh at them, yeah, they do not get a job, right? At least on our side, even if people laugh at them in their job, people say that, oh, you people devalidate the poor people, it doesn't matter because at least they do get a job. On your side, it doesn't matter how capable the person is, as long as they get in, they will be viewed as non-equals, and it doesn't matter. For all those reasons, proud to propose.
Thank you, MG. And to start, PK is coming from CEO calling on MO. Here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. Just give me a moment. Uh, I want to go over my notes. Please. Tak, CJ got. CJ got. Uh, okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Member here, Hanif. He, him, your eyes via voice. Start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Dear panel, the government is very narrow-minded because they don't exist the benefits that already exist in status quo for the majority of people, which is like for the majority like race, for the majority like of that inherent diversity. And how an opening doesn't really stress the cases that happen outside of colonization that I will cover a bit later. And secondly, the clash that they only care about is the rich black person versus the poor white person. Which person should we give our money to? And we will clear this out also. Firstly, a couple of rebuttals towards like the government bench in general. Firstly, the opening bench. They uh, like the closing. I will cover closing first. They assume that they put the words in our mouths that we say that all minorities is needy, therefore we should give scholarships to all minorities. This is completely uncharitable because a lot of affirmative action policies and scholarships depend on quota, meaning there is a limited number of seats that can be filled by certain races. So therefore, when there's a limited number of seats, there needs to be check and balances that exist, meaning you check whether or not the person is poor, whether the person is rich or not, before you give them the slot. You don't just give them because they're a minority, just give them. They need to know that the scholarship is worthwhile. Meaning, within this quota, the people that we give the scholarship to will 100% be poor people, and although not as poor as majority, we will say we I will cover later on why these people are more need this like scholarship. Secondly, the closing also mentions that racism worsens when we implement like diversity policy, because these people will look like incapable even though they get into like MIT or Harvard or something. So even if true, now these people have the power. These people are within these circles that they have voices where they can voice out what is needed for their minority. Meaning they are in schools, they are in work, they are leading like organizations. Meaning they can push for change. I will cover a lot more about this later on. So on to my first argument. So how is inherent diversity, meaning races, systematically disenfranchised? Note that I believe that the opening government already covers how colonization happens and how that doesn't really how colonization happens, and a lot of the examples are actually in Malaysia, which Malaysia is actually a bad example because the majority of people is disenfranchised at some point, which at at a at a very fast pace, you can very much bring up these people outside from poverty. Note that this doesn't only happen in Malaysia. This also happens in this like systematic disenfranchisement also happens in apartheid Africa, where white people get more government jobs and black people and the rest just gets like normal jobs. And in the second, this also happens in immigration, because when there are people that go outside of their nations due to reasons that they cannot change. This is the people that we really need to care about, because these people, they in their country, they cannot change the wars that happen, and there's insane or probably insane racism like what is happening to Rohingya. Secondly, because of slavery, for example, like what is happening to blacks in America. So how can they not get the economic benefit in status quo? Well, because firstly, racism exists. Large majority, when this large majority of people, for example, immigration happens, this large majority of people enters this certain country. Therefore, there's a huge influx of this certain race. There's a huge change, and humans don't like change. Because of this huge change and this huge influx of people, the different views will clash. Therefore, racism exists. This is important because when racism exists, less of this race gets employed, therefore less interaction between them, and less aid to them. Secondly, they cannot get any economic benefit because they are starting anew. They come here, leaving their families, they take the risk, they literally have nothing. Sometimes they don't even understand the language, so it's hard for them to find a jobs. And thirdly, other systems that exist, for example, soft locking certain groups because you need certain languages to work with them. So how is this important? Because economic benefit for nation, because firstly, because there's more economic benefit for a nation, because There's more people working, there's new skills being brought in, and there's more GDP because there's a lot more movement of money and there's more culture. Therefore, yeah, you can sell the culture. Secondly, human rights. These immigrants are humans. They have family, they have feelings, they have likes, they have dislikes, they feel pain. So for you to not help them, you are basically torturing them and assaulting them
POI.
dignity on their dignity. I won't take any because I don't have time. So how do the majorities in our current status quo have systems benefiting them? Firstly, they have support systems, meaning they have companies that actually soft lock certain groups out of the companies and only allow certain groups to join their companies. For example, companies that only employ people that can speak Mandarin. Although this is not an outright saying that, okay, we don't employ like other races, it soft locks only only the large majority of Chinese people can actually access this job. We have bigger families and relatives, therefore more friends and more relatives, meaning that they have a larger network, meaning more nepotism. Because even if a minority does a good job, people will see you as the white person. People will know you as the white person because they have seen you work. Secondly, how does this majorities have like better like systems benefiting them? It's because of racism, and racism is not towards them. And thirdly, historically, these people are economically more well and they get better jobs. For example, the Chinese people, like what is happening in OG. So change is better achieved on our side because we target people that are systematically challenged. Because even if we have full quota of minority, we pick the best minority. Secondly, we strengthen the support system, meaning we have more rich minorities in our world, meaning these rich minorities and they can start families, start companies that benefit more of their minorities. And thirdly, discourse, because now these minorities are in power, they can change laws, they can change the opinions of people. They have some sort of voice. On government side, we don't support any voice at all. With that, I'm very proud to oppose.
Thank you, member of opposition. And to close the Gov bench, calling on Gov Whip. Here.
Hi. Can I'll only take a POI at 5:30. Please don't interrupt me before. Just type it on the chat. Don't give me any vocal POIs. Thank you. Okay. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. It is very frustrating to listen to different sub-reasons on equal opportunities and protections of rights when it's clearly depicted on both sides of the house, on both low-income people and the people minority groups that are trying to fight for the exact same things. In today's debate, what we want to do is to focus, as shown by my member of government, how we want to focus on the need of the actual help, and not because of skin color, not because of primary school level education or disabilities. We want to focus on who needs the help most. It is clear and apparent that the opposition side most want to get out of this is to be treated equally. And similarly, on our side of the house, we also want to be seen and given rights. But in addition to that, we need the help more, which will be demonstrated in, as mentioned, as MG, and I'll wrap it up in my speech. There's a few things I'll do in today's debate. First, I'll make some refutable debuts from the previous speaker. Second, I'll make some rebuts from house by house. Third, I'll talk about the importance of the extension from the MG. Fourth, I'll lay out the best and worst case on the table. And lastly, I will reinforce why we should win as a closing government. The first thing I'd like to do is talk about the previous speaker, who gave us 2 points. One, racism is disenfranchised, and second, human rights. Regarding how racism deprives people of human rights, very similarly, people that are having low incomes, they don't even have the resources to apply. Similarly to their side of the house, they cannot apply because of their skin colors. Outside the house, we can apply because we don't have enough resources. Similarly, we're both being deprived of resources and both face discrimination. Second point, on human rights, they say we have some support system or whatsoever. However, on their side of the house, they also have campaign against racism. They also have LGBT classes at school. They also has the social movement to help. At the end of the day, at the best case scenario that MO just portrayed within their 2 extension is just putting the same parallel argument of giving same amount of rights and same amount of protection, which we both want to achieve under both sides of the house. Now, moving on to DLO's argument. LO comes up and saying that, oh, birth cannot be changed. And that is one thing that they should really focus on. However, on our side of the house, it should be reckoned that generation poverty, that in itself, if no action is taken, that cannot be changed as well. That means people will be continuously going through low income levels and they will continuously not have opportunities, no chances, very similar to their side of the house. But at most, the arguments that we hear are parallel. Second, they talk about incentive and representations. Incentive representation similarly can be happen under our side house. We could have someone from an extremely poor family, an extremely less fortunate family, and they can become a CEO of a huge company, and similarly, they break the stereotype. They deserve rights and they show hope. All these arguments that we hear across this bench from the opposition are all parallel arguments that also are reinforcing the protection of rights and how that could be done. And then the last argument coming from DLO is how they can completely abolish racism, which we would like to emphasize is untrue. At the very most, in their most charitable case, they're able to mitigate this opportunity by giving more people to have access to apply. But it's really hard to say they can completely eliminate, because all about changing racism is not just giving opportunity, but changing mindsets of the society. And very similarly, on our side of the house, actually, with people with low income, they can actually make a change. If they are able to work hard enough, get this motivation from being given a scholarship, they can actually catapult themselves and leave the socialist class by working hard and making changes. So on their side of the house, the best case scenario is that they're able to mitigate their impacts. However, on our side of the house, we can actually completely eliminate the problem of these lower income people. Now, after I talk about that, let me move on to my third point and talking about the importance of my extension made by my MG. My MG focused on the idea of needs. Why is this so important? Because on the idea of needs, it actually aligns to the specific needs of an individual, in which in low income people, they don't even have the chance to apply, whereas someone who is a black man, they at least can be applied. And diversity policies would only revoke their rights, as already explained by my MG, of actually them being seen of actually caring or actually may achieve something at their own merits. Because on their side of the house, the most important part or factor that they want to get is that how they are being seen as equal and be treated as equal, which will not be done under this policy. However, on our side of the house, our ultimate goal, yes, is right. We want protection, we want equality, but more importantly, we want to cater a possibility, a chance, and an opportunity, which can only be done if we're given a scholarship, if we're given some monetary value to actually catapult up and given a chance to work hard and make a change, which we can implement change. And on their side of the house, they are unable to implement a change. And why is extension so important? A, because it's responsive to change, and it's what we can do as an acquired characteristics such as educational level and language proficiency. Secondly, there's a direct impact. We give someone the sponsorship money, we give this economic stability to someone, enter universities, they get a change. However, if we do it for a black person, at the very most, it will get them in, but it doesn't really impact them as racist in a whole. It's a mindset that has to be changed, which is on our side, it's a need that needs to be done for these lower income people. And these are the two reasons as to why it was so important to make the extension, as we heard from the G. Now, as to the most important part of my speech, comparing the best case scenarios and the worst case scenarios, what I'll do is compare the opposition's best case with our worst case, and this can also effectively answer the POI asked to my MG. Opposition's best case is to say that they're able to effectively advocate for historically marginalized group, and they can argue that this is they can fight this long-standing inequality. The truth is, in order to try to reach this target, it comes at a cost that would be extremely detrimental. Let's say a black man who is incredibly intelligent, hardworking, and grasped onto every opportunity that they could do so. They got into an Ivy League school with a full scholarship based on personal merits. But because of this label of being historically marginalized, and he's seen to have been allocated to one of these diversity policy slots. And in this case, his hardworking efforts will be completely disregarded, and it will not be able to help do the benefits as proclaimed by LO of having reputation and having the idea of being they're able to achieve it by their own merits, but they'll be seen as a liability because only they got in by the system and not by their own merits when they clearly have the resources to do so. Both opening keeps on emphasizing on the importance of rights and equality. On government opposition, the parallel on arguments of principle. The tipping point should be focused on the needs of individual. And here's where we are willing to bite the bullet and present the worst case scenario. Even if this is reputational damage upon being a lower income level or a lower education people think that you get on the spot in a good school or job because you're being a less fortunate family, as depicted by LO and the info side. Inherent diversity is something that you follow your entire life. But even if so, this is a label they can easily remove. That means people that are inherently inherently discriminated by coming from a low-income family. They get the scholarship, get into, let's say, Harvard, but now that because of reputational loss, they can still make change. This is an amazing thing about acquired diversity. People now want to remove this label. They can do their best. They can work hard, put their heads down, get a good GPA, get a good job, get a good income, and they can escape the cycle of low income. We can actually implement change and motivation and incentive by removing this level. And this is why you should vote for government. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Flip. And to close the debate, calling on Opwhip. Here.
Hello. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, okay. Give me a minute. Just clear out my note. Okay. I was before that, POI through verbal prefer pronouns she her. So I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So first of all, my speech consists of two part. Firstly, it consists of clashes analysis, and followed by that, moving on with some rebuttals. So first thing, so the entire debate is basically answering two questions. Firstly, which side help the vulnerable group better? The most vulnerable group better. And the second question is about which side can solve so-called discrimination against the minority, no matter gender or race or physical disability whatsoever. So first thing, which side did help the vulnerable group better? So in the entire debate, we are talking about the vulnerable group as the people who are poor. From the government side is no matter whether what skin color you are when you are poor, you are vulnerable group. Okay, so things are both sides have to understand that things are correlated. So we have to admit that minority group, there are some people that are poor, there are some people they are rich. Minority group are not equal to needy group, but we have to admit that because of some reason, the both minority group and majority group that confine in the lowest financial status, the minority group is harder to get out from the status compared to majority group. And I will tell you why. So minority group are confined in this lower financial status even harder, even longer, hard to get out from it than majority is because they are being discriminated. And they had to get into world-class education. They had to get a nice and decent job because of a discrimination that already exists in a system, as mentioned by my MOO, that the system is actually against this group of people. So from OO, they also mentioned that in order for you to get out from that low financial status, from that suffering scenario, you need to get a job, you need to get better education in order for you to change your life. But in today's world, in status quo, there is discrimination. So they had to get those job and education in order to change their life. And I believe that my MO also mentioned that in our world, our system can actually strengthen the support system and to create more rich majority that can support the other rich minority that can support the other minority. And I'll give a
POI.
more exact, later. I'll get a more exact visualization. So when a minority they can get benefit from the inherent diversity policy, they can get benefit from it, they have scholarship from it. It can get world-class education. It can be she or her can be a politician and make impactful, make a visualable changes for themselves, for their growth. So that can actually resolve the discrimination, which is a second question I will answer later on. So even if a minority group is rich, it's even under today's world is rich, is able to get into world-class education and might not need help. But that doesn't mean that they deserve to be discriminated in today's world. They deserve to getting lower quota. Their group deserve to get lower quota just because of some of them are luckily and able to get into good uni, is born in a rich family. So moving on, I'll talk about which side actually solve discrimination better. So I believe that in the entire debate, we already talk about why discrimination exists is because of immigration, historical reason, blah blah blah. So I have to bite the bullet that inherent diversity policy indeed wasn't this kind of stereotype in a short term time. So what will happen in long term is that when more and more minority groups get into world-class uni, more and more politicians are able to make change, more and more activists are able to voice out for their minority group, and everybody is getting equality that they deserve. I don't think that this kind of policy still need to be carried out when discrimination is solved. But what happened in today's world is discrimination still exists. So it's a trade-off for long-term changes that more and more minority with ability they can make changes. We're willing to trade off and bite the bullet that in short term it indeed wasn't stereotyped, but hopefully when more and more this group of people is created, more and more talent from minority group is created, we're able to make changes and stop discrimination. Yes, POI, please.
Okay, if your approach to solving like discrimination and everything is just to get as much minorities into like positions such as like university placement, why then in today's status quo is there still so many discrimination against minorities?
Because the system is in today's world are still go against minority. Are still go against them. So it's remain unsolved because in the status quo, the system are not changing at all. So moving on, I will continue with my rebuttal towards the government whip just now is regarding that representation can happen on both sides. Representation can happen on both sides. Yes, indeed, but the representation coming from a minority that receive that in our world that receive the inherent diversity policy can bring much more impact towards these people and telling them that you know what, even though we are now still confined in financial status quo, but the policy is trying to help us, so we should work harder and giving the hope that maybe people change their mind, change their thought that we actually and view our suffering scenario that's confined in lower financial status can get out as a real issue and trying to help them. It gives them hope to represent a voice out, to stand up, and instead of remaining silent. So what will happen in the government world is that yes, they indeed help the poor people, but that's all. That's the only impact that the government bring. And in our world, when we are focusing on the minority group, we view the discrimination that really happened as a real issue and trying to solve them. We are able to in the long term, we're able to reduce discrimination. In the short term, even though with stereotype, we are still able to make changes. So for that, I'm proud to propose.
Okay. Thank you, Upwit. And to the debaters of this room, please virtually cross the house.